Thanks for tuning in to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us. I can't believe that the season has gone this fast. We're already going to be talking about fall pasture spraying and when the best time to kill those tough weeds is. It could be right now.
Well, one of the other jobs that a lot of people take care of in the fall is addressing their drainage issues. We're going to talk about that today as well.
Got an interesting weed of the week. We'll talk about how tillage might be a bad option for controlling this particular weed. But first, let's go to our farm basics.
During our farm basics time today, we're going to talk about what is a fallow year and why farmers will have a fallow year sometimes and why many farmers have now gone away from that.
Well, where this fallow discussion begins is generally in dry areas of the country that just don't get very much rain. And the idea is, well, if I only use the rain up in a crop once every other year, I'm going to be okay. So I'll raise, say, wheat one year, and then I'll go fallow the next year and raise no crop and try and store up all that moisture from the second year. So in the third year, I can put wheat out there again, and I'll basically have all the moisture from 2 years to grow a crop. And you know, you wouldn't do that in an area that gets lots and lots of rainfall, but in areas that don't, that's been an option that farmers have used over the years.
Now, the one other thing that I can think of why a person may have a fallow year is in the soil, there is organic matter. Well, what happens with organic matter is it breaks down over time based on the amount of heat and the amount of moisture that's in there, but mostly heat. Then organic matter will release certain nutrients that are important for plants. So if there's no crop growing there, nothing to use up some of those nutrients over an entire year, it's very possible that a soil test in 1 year could show a lot more nutrients than just the year before.
Well, we see that in drought years, Brian, when there's a drought and there's a failed crop. So instead of 150 bushel corn, a grower only gets 50. Well, there's all that organic matter that's breaking down in some of these soils, and there are lots of nutrients left. So the next year after a drought, oftentimes farmers have a good crop. So it could be along those same lines.
All right, we've really seen that fallow has gone way down in the United States thanks to the introduction of no-till. With no-till, farmers are able to actually conserve a lot more moisture. It takes less moisture to produce a crop, in addition to the fact that just more is sitting out there all the time during the course of the year. So no-till has allowed many farmers who were a little short on moisture before to now have a little more moisture and get away from fallow, in other words, raising a crop every other year, to now raising a crop every year.
Well, you think about it, when the weed control option in many of the fallow areas was tillage, how much moisture are we really saving if we're going to do tillage out there several times during the year?
The other thing that I would throw out there with these fallow years is we really worry about, with that tillage, breaking down organic matter faster, we're depleting organic matter, and also we're not going to have a home for soil microbes. So very often in corn, we talk about fallow syndrome, where the corn turns purple after a fallow year. And what's happening there is there's just as much phosphorus in the soil as there was before, maybe even more. But the problem is all those soil microbes, for example, mycorrhiza fungi, they don't have a home for a year, so a lot of them die off. Well, that mycorrhiza fungi helps bring phosphorus into the plant, and now all of a sudden your corn turns purple, even though your soil level of phosphorus hasn't gone down.
The other thing to think about in terms of water use efficiency is if plants have the right balance of nutrients out there, they're going to be more efficient with their water use, and they're going to need less gallons of water per bushel produced. And we're seeing farmers better manage fertility really around the world now compared to what we were doing a generation ago. And that is another thing that has reduced the need for a fallow year for a number of farmers, just that they're getting that fertility balance better.
Oh, once again, a fallow year is basically where a farmer raises no crop out there in the hopes of conserving moisture and maybe building soil fertility levels a little bit. But we have seen fallow years, or the use of fallow, go down in the United States thanks to no-till, thanks to better fertility utilization, and also thanks to better hybrids and just varieties that can survive with less water.
Well, one other thing farmers have gotten better at is controlling weeds like our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system. The system that makes the difference. Because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
Farmers across the country have put their confidence in the Roundup Ready Extend crop system. These are their experiences.
My expectations of the herbicide are it's going to work exactly like it did last year. It's one of the best things I've ever seen.
It's nice to have a product that was hyped and you get to see that it's a very good product.
I mean, it's annihilating pigweeds and everything it's supposed to do, it's doing.
You get to see that it was worth the hype.
Leading the charge in strip tillage for more than a decade, the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm today.
Avoid dry run failures with the new Hi-Pro Force Field pump. Providing the ultimate protection, this wet seal pump will save you on costly in-season downtime to keep your sprayer running. Now all you have to worry about is the weather. Hi-Pro, helping you spray better.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
At Estes Performance Concaves, we know how valuable your time is at harvest. That's why we designed the new XPR concave system. The XPR system is the #1 performance concave system on the market, surpassing the rest in both speed and efficiency, ensuring every last grain from your field gets into your tank. Plus, XPR concaves work for all row crops. No more changing concaves, meaning you have less downtime. Take back your bushels this harvest. Get Estes Performance Concaves in your combine today.
Fall is a great time to knock out some of the tough weeds in your pastures. We're going to talk about what to look for and when are the best timings for you and your farm. We'll also talk about a couple things to avoid.
All right, the most important thing that I want you to understand is your spraying needs to be done prior to your first hard killing frost. In fact, I'd like it done 1 to 2 weeks prior to your first hard frost. Here's the other thing. You've got to think a little bit about when can you get this done. I'll just give you the example on our farm. We start soybean harvest around the 25th of September every year. Okay, if I'm going to get this fall spraying done in my pastures, well, it's got to happen before soybean harvest, because once I get going with harvest, there's no possible chance we're going to be back out in those pastures for at least a month. So here's what I'm saying. A lot of times, well, even the segment of this show is called fall pasture spraying. What I'm saying here is maybe it's late summer pasture spraying. Technically, fall doesn't start till September 21. On our farm, though, about a September 10th, September 15th time frame works right based on, hey, frost is going to occur 2 to 3 weeks later, and so is fall harvest.
The reason this timing before a frost is so important is because we're often dealing with perennial or biennial weeds. They're going to have an extensive root system, and in the case of many of the perennial weeds, like Canada thistle, for example, they've got an extensive rhizome system underneath the soil. What we need to do to control those weeds is deliver a lethal dose all the way down into that root system and to each growing point along the way. That means we need quick uptake of the herbicide, and we need a high dosage of herbicide at a time that those plants are going to bring it down into the root system and store it. So fall offers this great opportunity where the plants are preparing winter storage to survive until next season. It's a great time to get that herbicide in.
The other reason why fall is such a great time to spray is if you can weaken that plant enough. Even if you don't 100% kill it, if you 80 or 90% kill it, well, maybe the winter finishes it off.
When we think about fall, we also have cooler temperatures generally than the heat of the summer. So we've got some opportunities to get out there where the plants aren't completely stressed out. Oftentimes we may get some moisture here, so the plants are actively growing. And again, like Brian said, we'd like to get out there before that frost so we haven't lost some of that vegetation above ground and had a big stress event on the crop. We also don't want to have a huge stress from drought or other things. It's going to be difficult to get herbicides down into a weed that's stressed out from the environmental conditions.
All right, usually when we're talking about fall spraying, We talk perennials and biennials because obviously the annuals are going to die. So what we also want, besides just contact activity, is residual control. Usually the products that we have discussed over the years have been either Tordon, Milestone, or Chaparral. The reason why it's important to get these products out there now is you do want to have that contact activity, but also we want to have the residual control there for the rest of the fall and then also going into the spring. For that matter, all those products I just mentioned, Tordon, Milestone, and Chaparral, they're probably going to last for several years. We usually say, hey, with Tordon, you might be thinking in the 5 to 10 year range. Milestone, you're thinking in the 3 to 5 year range. Same thing with Chaparral, 3 to 5 years most likely that at least some of that residual is going to stay in the soil, at least killing some of your weeds.
Now certainly you have to adhere to any rotational restrictions or any grazing concerns when it comes to spraying your pasture and then letting the animals back in to graze. Also, another thing that comes into play in the fall is stalks. We get a lot of farmers who like to move the cattle off the pasture and out into the corn stalks. Well, if you're moving right from a pasture that's been sprayed with, say, Tordon, for example, the cattle are going to be ingesting some of that Tordon, which is safe for the animals. But as they leave their waste out in that cornfield, you're going to have droppings that include a little bit of Tordon in there, which is going to impact next year's crop. So keep that in mind. There's generally a couple of week window between when animals are feeding on hay or pasture that's been sprayed with Tordon to when you want to have them out in your fields.
Yeah, so just so we're clear on that, if you sprayed in the spring and your cattle have been out there all summer, chances are the amount of Tordon that's left in any animal or anything like that, it's pretty minimal. But where we do have a problem is for a guy that, let's say, sprays the 1st of September and then he turns the cattle out maybe the middle of September or the 1st of October, 2 to 4 weeks, generally speaking, is not enough.
Well, let's take on your two probably most important questions when it comes to pasture spraying. What weeds are we going to kill? What products are we going to use for those weeds? And then how much is that all going to cost?
Wait, that's 3 questions, Darren.
All right, whatever you want, Brian, but the weeds and the product selection, this is one thing. So when we think about annual weeds, sure, you could use something like Freelex or Distinct on them, but we're talking about biennials and perennials here. The best product on thistles historically has been Milestone. It works quite well. It gives you a long residual. Tordon also works pretty well on thistles. When it comes to leafy spurge, Tordon is certainly our first choice. And when we get to those woody species, Chaparral is often the answer there.
All right, in terms of cost, Milestone could be the most expensive. The full 7-ounce rate, you're going to probably spend $15 plus. With Tordon, you might be down in that $10, $12 range for a quart. And then we start thinking about Chaparral. Just depends on the rate that you're going to use. It's also somewhat expensive. You'll probably spend at least $10 to $15. But
well, here's the thing. It's going to last long, though, Brian.
Right,
it's not going to be a one-year fix, especially if you're in the West and you're in a dry climate. You're going to get multiple years of activity out of this where the fields or the pastures, in this case, are going to stay clean. Now, if you're in an area that's a very high rainfall area, well, you might be spraying every year with these products. But still, you're going to get better residual out of these than you would with a 2,4-D or Distinct application.
Yeah, and the big thing is here, getting more grass production, that's what it's all about. Start thinking about your pastures like they are a crop. You're trying to raise as much grass as possible. You can't do that with all kinds of weed competition.
One of those weeds that could be in your pasture or out in your crop fields is our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop it coming up later in the show.
No 2 seasons are the same. Each brings its own set of challenges, and you've seen a few. So many threats, and not one single thing can be taken for granted. In the fight against the unpredictable, the Acceleron portfolio provides coverage on 4 fronts: fungicides, insecticides, nematicides, and bioenhancers. Rise stronger with one simple decision.
Are you looking for an easy way to apply dry powdered products to your stored grain? Do you want to use the applicator recommended by industry leaders for products like Diacon D and other dry powder products? Changing Time CT applicators successfully apply a diversity of products quickly, easily, and accurately. The innovative CT applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, inoculants, fertilizers, and other dry products. For commercial use or on the farm, you need the applicator industry leaders are using. CT applicators for the changing times.
And how about the big man, Pro Germinator?
Yeah, this guy's got some experience in the field. But look at the stats. You can't argue with those kind of results.
You're right. I know a lot of teams wishing their phosphorus player had those kind of numbers.
Right, but this guy's not just phosphorus. He's got the nitrogen, the potassium, the micros. All those just add up to his phosphorus game.
And his game is good.
Morton is eager to make the building you've always dreamed of a reality. Visit us online at mortonbuildings.com.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. Because Case IH offered the first 5-axle design to give you more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction, all to help you be more productive. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
Fixing poor drainage areas is certainly a priority for many farms going into this fall season. 2018 saw a lot of rain, heavy rain in certain areas. Other areas didn't get any. But my dad always looked at those heavy rain years as an opportunity to see which areas of your fields really did have some drainage problems that needed improving. So we'll talk about how to do that on today's show.
Yeah, before we get into how to fix the drainage areas, there are just some things you got to understand too. Poor drainage leads to lots of other problems on the farm. Let's think about, hey, if I have poor drainage, I have more compaction issues. I'm going to have more disease issues. Eventually, I'm going to have more salt. I'm going to have fewer microbes because without oxygen in that soil, not only do roots die and crops die, but so do soil microbes. So what I'm trying to say here is if you want a healthier soil, you have to have good drainage. I can promise you, if you have poor drainage, you will not have a healthy soil.
What the focus is for many farmers and certainly passers-by is the water that's on top of the soil. And it's kind of like crop growth. We focus on, well, how does the crop look? But what's going on below ground is even more important. So when we think about drainage, we're concerned about the water that's beneath the soil. And so many times we don't see how that water moves, and we think, well, if we just fix this one little pothole here, we'll get rid of that water pond that's out in the field and everything will be great. But if your water table is consistently up in that top foot, you're definitely killing roots and you're definitely reducing yield.
Here's what I want you to think about too. Yes, it's possible. You can do some landscaping and basically move the water off your field faster by eliminating some of those potholes Darren talked about with ditching and other practices above the ground. But the real problem is below the ground. That's why we talk about drain tile so much, because we want the water table down. And there are so many misconceptions out there about tile. We talk about it often here in Ag PhD. Tile doesn't take all the water out of the ground. Tile doesn't automatically run just because it rains. The only reason tile works is when the water table rises above the level of the tile. So placing tile 3 to 4 feet deep in the ground keeps the water table down so roots have room to grow and there's more oxygen in that soil.
You want to begin any program to improve drainage areas in your field by focusing on those lowest spots in the field. And if you can get the drainage to work out of those lowest spots, well, you can get it to work for the rest of the field. Now, this may involve a lift station, and if you need it, put one in. You're going to get many years of benefit out of that one-time investment.
A lot of people do ask about cost with lift stations. Generally speaking, we're talking $10,000 to start with. Might be a little bit more depending on your situation, but what we've spent has been about $10,000 to put that in the ground and get a basic pump. I would spend a little bit more money and get a 2-stage pump. That's what I would do. And if you want to do that, hey, just the pump alone might cost $7,500 or something. But anyway, on our farm, I can just tell you to drain off a 1/2 inch drainage coefficient with a 7.5 horse pump. It's cost us roughly around $20 a year to pump the water out. $20 per acre per year. Now, we've spent as much as about $8 an acre in a month at the peak, and most of the time we're not even running the lift station. So it just depends on your situation and what you're going to spend. But the way I look at it, heck, even if I spent $50 an acre, that's only 5, maybe 8 bushels of soybeans. Well, we're getting more like 30 or 40 bushels of soybeans more production now that we put in the lift station where we absolutely desperately needed it.
And there are so many other benefits to fixing these problem areas in your field. When you think about equipment and all the times turning around in the field and compaction and possibly even getting stuck out there, not saying that ever happened to Brian or me, but it is possible out in those areas of the field. So getting those areas fixed is going to improve your yield, but it's also going to make the field so much easier to farm.
All right, how are you going to do this? You're going to have to install tile. So work with someone in your area who's done it before. Otherwise, you absolutely can do it yourself. What we often talk about is start with the easiest stuff when you're doing it yourself. We started with the hilliest land we had just so we get some practice in, and over the last 11 years, we've installed tile on virtually every field we've got. It's helped yield just unbelievably. And then in addition to that, we have much, much healthier soil. So I'm super excited about our yields for the next 10 years, even though the last 10 years have been really good.
If you're looking for more information on drainage, in the September Ag PhD Insider magazine, we'll have an extensive write-up on everything that you need to know. You can find out more information and subscribe by visiting agphdinsider.com.
Another thing you'll always find in the Ag PhD Insider magazine is information on weed control, like our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to stop this tough weed coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our Weed of the Week is a tough one. It's perennial sow thistle.
Well, as the name suggests, this is a perennial weed, and it is difficult to control because it has an extensive rhizome system, like we were talking about when we were mentioning fall pasture spraying. This might be one of those weeds that you say, oh, I have to get rid of that. Use one of the products that gets down into the root system.
Well, we've always talked about Tordon, and Tordon has been excellent because it has both contact and residual control, and that residual lasts several years. But now there's Milestone, and we think Milestone is even better.
Yeah, Stinger can work as well. We've used Stinger for a long time out in crop fields as well that can allow for Stinger use, like corn, for example. 2,4-D and dicamba can be used, but you're going to need multiple applications. We found pretty good success with the spring application followed by a fall application, so we just continuously stay after it. But if you want it done in one shot, I'd recommend the Tordon. Now, out in crop fields, tillage is something we want to avoid when it comes to perennial sow thistle because research has shown even a 1/4 inch piece of those rhizomes is enough to send up a new shoot. So you don't want that. If you till it up to have 20 weeds come up after you just tilled one, that would be a mistake.
Yeah, so the whole point is leave that root system all connected. Then when you get the herbicide in, it gets all the way through the extensive root system.
All right, well, in crop fields, glyphosate, 2,4-D, and dicamba are your best options. So in crops where those are labeled, that's what I would recommend for perennial sow thistle control. Other than that, the other herbicides we may use just burn off top growth, and that's all we see. The other thing I would mention is that animals will graze on perennial sow thistle, so if you can intensively graze the areas where you have a sow thistle infestation and then fertilize and get good grass growth to choke it out, you've got a chance that way too.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, perennial sow thistle, but stay tuned, Iron Talk is coming up next.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
This agro-liquid line is something special. A lot of really impressive playmakers. Take a look at Sure K. This guy is an enigma.
But wrap your head around the exceptionally high plant response when compared to conventional potassium sources, the research-proven plant availability, plus flexible application options and mixing capabilities.
Really stellar performance stats. Sure K is a true standout, and that's a winning goal on any field.
Are you looking to make a career in an ag-related field? The Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation is pleased to offer a $2,500 scholarship for students enrolled in an agricultural program for the 2018-2019 school year. The goal with this scholarship is to further the education of students who understand the importance of proper stewardship and responsible nutrient management for agriculture and society as a whole. To learn more and apply, visit rnmf.org/scholarship before October 15th.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Row Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us.
Because Case IH offered the first 5-axle design to give you more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction, all to help you be more productive.
Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
Reducing grain damage with the combine can pay big dividends with higher quality and better storability. You may need a modification on your combine to accomplish this though. I'll explain in today's Iron Talk. We like to get rolling pretty early on corn compared to most. Once we're in the sweet spot of 22 to 25% moisture, we can get the maximum net yield and profit by harvesting. The challenge is, the higher the moisture content on corn, the faster and tighter you need to run the rotor. The more you're compressing the corn cob against a steel concave, well, the more cracks, splits, and grain damage you'll have. Have you ever noticed on your computer that it may be a Dell computer, but it has an Intel processor and a Beats audio system? Dell may be good at making computers, but they get superior components from other manufacturers to make it even better. With combines, there are so many pieces and parts to put together, it makes sense that there are a few things that you'd want to change on that as well. For our farm and many more, the concaves were one thing that we decided to change, not only to improve our grain quality, but also to reduce grain loss as well. We've been using Estes concaves for a while now and love them. The unique design of the Estes XPR concaves allows for more grain-on-grain threshing, which means you can run the rotor slower and more open, resulting in less grain damage. Since the concaves thresh sooner and are more open than stock concaves, they get grain down onto the auger sooner, meaning less time in the rotor getting beat up by rotor bars and less grain damage. Now, less grain damage means better storability due to superior grain quality, you get less dockage at the elevator, and potentially even a premium price. If you're harvesting grain for seed, this is a no-brainer as well. So changing out the concaves on your combine could pay you big dividends like it did for us in corn, but it also works for soybeans, wheat, and other crops too. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune into the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us each weekday on SiriusXM Channel 147 at 2 p.m. Central.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.